Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series, Survival Horror Sanctuary, where I take a look at some of my favorite, obscure, or rare survival horror games of all time. Today we're taking a look at Clock Tower 2, The Struggle Within. But I'm actually playing the undubbed version of this. That means that we're getting the Japanese dialogue with English subtitles, because the original game's English voiceover acting was so bad it actually ruined the game for me personally. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. You should probably check at least one of those out, or else what happened to her behind the door might happen to you. But honestly, Clock Tower 2 is a game that you're either going to love or hate. There is no middle ground with this series. I absolutely love it, but I can tolerate all the weird and strange things it does, because even though it's a fully 3D polygonal game, it is a point-and-click horror game, and that's what Clock Tower was always doing up until a certain point in time. Started on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System and went from there. And like I said, your mileage may vary. If you're into point-and-click adventure games and you like survival horror, there's definitely a lot here to love. If you don't like the idea of playing a point-and-click horror survival game, just watch the video and I'll explain to you why you probably should be into that idea, and maybe I'll convince you by the end. But the basic premise is something is going on in this house. There's a curse, and Alyssa has arrived to stay with this family, and they weren't sure if they wanted her to stay or not. And upon her arrival, something very wrong has happened in the house, and we have a green leg with this yellow blood stuck into the toilet. The main hook of Clock Tower 2 is that there's so many different ways to play and so many different endings. I think there's 8 different endings in this game, and the way you trigger them is very esoteric. Now, there are a lot of walkthroughs online, so you can definitely refer to those, because this is the type of game that you discover by trial and error. And when the monsters in the house do come out and try to attack you, you are powerless. This is a survival horror puzzle, and it's a genre that I particularly enjoy. But you'll see here that I did get a hint. Certain items in the environment will just start giving you hints, and it's going to tell us that we have a dual nature. Basically, Alyssa has an alternate personality that needs to be used sometimes to progress further on into the game. It's very Resident Evil 0-like, but as opposed to having 2 characters you control, you have 2 personalities that will give you individual results depending on which ones you use. As we take a look at this tub here, there is a human torso with the hand up in the air, and you don't know why it got there. And you get this creepy childlike laughter in the background that reminds me a lot of PT, the playable trailer for Silent Hills, the Hideo Kojima released on the PlayStation 4. But you want to be checking everything in the environment, because what we found here is a key. You're going to interact with a lot of locked doors, and you need to figure out how to circumnavigate this entire house, because it does become quite complex as the game goes further along. But basically, the owners of the house were waiting for their daughter to come back from school, and this is, I believe, her friend Alyssa. But what happened in between the time that the wife left the dining room and you arrived at the house is very uncertain. But as we play through the game more, we're going to start getting more details of what exactly has gone wrong. And that's what I really love about the Clock Tower series, is it slowly unravels the story around us and gives us a little bit more drip-fed information time and time again. Because you'll see here, as we go through the dining room with that locked key, we're going to find a severed arm on the dining room table, and as we click on it, it's going to do something. It's going to jump. And that's just fun. It's classic Japanese style horror in the point-and-click survival horror genre, and there are not a lot of games in that particular genre, so this is very unique and in its own way a genre unto itself. But like I said, your mileage with this game will 100% vary as to whether or not you like to use point-and-click controls. But I love this phone conversation. Listen for 20 seconds and I'll be right back. Now, maybe I'm just imparting similarities where they don't exist, but like I said earlier, this reminds me a lot of PT. You have these weird phone calls with ethereal voices on the other end. You have body parts in bathrooms. I'm not saying Hideo Kojima was inspired by Clock Tower 2, but I'm kind of saying maybe Hideo Kojima was inspired by Clock Tower 2. These games are just totally different than what you're used to, but that's why I really enjoy them so much, and I love the open-ended nature of them and how many different endings there are. You're going to have so many different playthroughs of this game, and they're all going to be slightly different, and trying to get all the endings really is where the charm in this game lies. And if you've never played a Clock Tower game before, I would recommend you start on the Super Nintendo, the original Clock Tower, where those only released in Japan, but there is an English translation, and then from there you can come over to Clock Tower 2, because there are a lot of games in this series, and they're all wholly unique and different from one another, but still share the same DNA to give you a particularly unique experience, because like I said, this is totally different than what you're used to. But now as we come into this bedroom here, we're going to find out what happened to the daughter, and I do love the sound effects and music, so listen for another 30 seconds and I'll come back and try to convince you more as to why you should play Clock Tower. But enjoy.
You そんなに怖がる。
So yeah, the daughter Ashley has definitely lost her head, and it is in her suitcase when she was coming back home. And that caused our main character to transition to her other personality, and she does have different traits, and that's going to be a huge mechanic of the game, because we're soon going to find an amulet that allows us to restore personality back to its normal state. As you come out of the door here, that samurai has activated. He's now a threat. One, the cursor is glowing. If you press circle at the right time, you can evade him. It is very specific timing wise, and it is quite difficult, but this game is very generous with continues and saves, so honestly if you die, you just need to try the same sequence over again. But when you do get the amulet in this next scene, there's different areas in the game that allow you to take it off and store it. So you don't get to change your persona on the fly. You need to understand where those areas are and use them to your advantage. Kind of the same way in Resident Evil, you had the item boxes and you had to navigate your inventory based on what you needed in that particular period of time. But you'll see here as we come into the kitchen, doors just randomly unlock after encounters in the game occur, and I know some people don't like that because it is a timed event, but I particularly like having things solved for me, for lack of a better term. Suddenly an area that you didn't think you could get to before is now accessible, and some things in the game like the refrigerator just aren't important right now, but if you had done something different, maybe there would be something in that refrigerator. So every playthrough you want to check everything, because the game does change and evolve to the point where you can never be 100% certain what's going to happen. Because on some playthroughs I've opened this cabinet and nothing's happened. On this playthrough the cabinet starts to shake and I am able to push the button at the right time to avoid what's coming out there. Those 4 dishes wanted to cut our heads off. Now I can't stress this enough. You'll either absolutely love Clock Tower 2 or you'll absolutely hate it. There is no in between. I think it's an amazing series that more people should play. But leave me a comment down below. Have you ever played any of the Clock Tower games? If so, did you like them? Or watching this video, are you kind of intrigued into wanting to play one? Because now we had this Kabuki Place child ready to kill us. Short of that, that's Clock Tower 2, a very weird game, but one that I absolutely love. See you guys next Tuesday on the episode in this series. We hope you enjoyed it. Play Clock Tower 2. Bye-bye.